Listen up, there's not a moment to spare. It's quite a drop from the top, so how you feeling down there? Red alert, time, shine a light down. On the front lines of my mind now. Riding my time on the high ground. Blinded but I'm still alive, shout oh. They said we're lucky to have got this far, and that is not worth fighting for.
Okay, everyone, I apologize for the delay in this video, but god damn it, I had yet another bad week where everything that could have possibly gone wrong went wrong, and I'm just trying to, I've been trying to just keep up with all of it before I go insane. My car broke down, work's been insane. I just had a really bad week where just, again, anything that could have possibly gone wrong went wrong. And, yeah, I've just been really, really super stressed out about it. So, right off the bat, typically my first video of the month includes the top 10 matches from the previous month. Unfortunately, I'm going to put that off on hold until the next video because I'm currently trying to catch up on the Honor Rising shows from Ring of Honor and New Japan. So I want to watch those shows before I make a determination on the top 10 matches for February. Also, I do want to talk briefly about some movies that I've watched recently, for those of you that care about me doing movie reviews, so that's going to be part of this video. And the main topic of this video is going to be about casting in professional wrestling. Again, future videos that are upcoming, I definitely want to do a Diamond Dallas Page tribute video, so that'll be coming in the future soon. Also, I'm not going to do a preview for Fastlane, which is actually happening tonight. Mainly because I feel like I've already talked about, all the matches and everything in some way, shape, or form in my more recent video. So, but there will be a review up next week, so be on the lookout for that. So, I guess I'll just jump right into the movie reviews. Some recent movies that I've watched that I've really enjoyed, actually. Lego Batman, which was hilarious, clever, and awesome. John Wick Chapter 2, which had some of the best directed action sequences I've seen in a long time. Very, very good, and if you want good, well-directed action, absolutely check out John Wick 2. And then I saw, last night actually, I saw Logan. Went to go see it with my sister, and we, we're both big, comic book fans and Marvel fans and X-Men fans, so naturally we just went with each other, and we were very interested in checking it out. And I gotta say, there's a lot of hype surrounding this film, and it's getting huge critical acclaim, and everybody seems to be in love with it, and it's being praised as one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. I've heard some people suggest that Hugh Jackman should get an Academy Award nomination next year. It was just that level of praise, and it's very easy to get caught up in that and get kind of sucked into the moment and everything, and let that just kind of carry everything. However, my feelings on the movie, that was pretty fucking amazing. I gotta say, that movie was pretty fucking amazing. And maybe it's just the hype of after having just seen it. But, I'm an adult, and I've seen just about anything imaginable, so I don't typically feel this super hyped after a movie. Not anymore. I gotta say, that might be the best comic book movie ever made. And I know that's a heavy boast. I know that's a bold statement. I know I just saw it last night, so maybe I'm just still on a high from seeing it, but that movie was friggin' awesome. And if you haven't seen it, go see it. So I definitely want to recommend that to everybody. The performances are great. The story is exactly what I've wanted out of a major, a movie with a major property attached to it, because, and I think I've talked about this before, but I'm really getting kind of sick and tired of the shut down the Doomsday Weapon style of story that most comic book films are kind of falling into right now. And even a lot of big blockbusters like Star Wars The Force Awakens, the worst part of that movie was the fact that they had to shoehorn another Death Star in there. They literally called it another Death Star. And it's like, the movie would have been just fine if you didn't have Starkiller Base in it. I'm just saying, it's why didn't they just keep the movie focused on the map to Luke Skywalker and have it be kind of like an Indiana Jones style of Star Wars film? It would have been something different for the series, at least. Completely unnecessary to have another planet-busting weapon in there. I was so, like, it's by far the worst part of that movie. But this movie tells a smaller story, smaller scaled story, more personal character-driven story, not reliant necessarily on big budget special effects or glitz and glamour. It's actually very violent and very gruesome at points. But it kind of feels like this could have been like an old spaghetti western or like a Death Wish movie or something like that. And it works amazingly well. And again, by the end of it, my sister, she was crying. And I don't mean to out her and embarrass her, but she was crying by the end of it. It's an emotional ride, to say the least. You feel like a full range of emotions while watching the film. And if this truly is Hugh Jackman's last time as Logan and Patrick Stewart's last time as Charles Xavier, they did an absolutely amazing job. And they hit it out of the park their last time up to bat. That was a great, wonderful farewell to both of those actors in those roles that they've kind of made their own. And I can't praise the movie enough. Like I said, it might be the best comic book movie ever made. And at the very least, I'll say this, and this is not a knock against the Marvel Studios films or anything like that. This might be, at the very least, it's the best comic book movie since The Dark Knight, without question for me. And I really liked Winter Soldier, and I really liked Guardians, and the first Avengers movie and the first Iron Man, but I'm like, Dark Knight, it was kind of like the measuring stick of comic book films for a while, and I think Logan is the best one. At the very least, it's the best one since then. Absolutely outstanding movie and definitely worth checking out. So those are my movie recommendations. And if you end up seeing Lego Batman, if you haven't seen it already, like I said, it's very funny, very colorful. It's a love letter to Batman fans, so absolutely check that out. And John Wick Chapter 2, if you want a great action movie, check that out as well. So yeah, 3 movies, and 3 movies that I loved, and it's like, man, I can't picture too many things topping it this year. And if there's a movie that winds up being better than Logan, I can't wait to see it, because goddamn, Logan was fucking unbelievable. So, that's all the movie talk I have for you. Now let's get into the main wrestling topic I wanted to discuss. And really, this was, my idea for this discussion was really, given to me by the recent failure of the Emmalina gimmick and them basically dropping it. And there's various aspects to that I could talk about, but the main thing I'm going to focus on is the casting of wrestling and casting the right performers in the right roles. And like I said, the Emmalina character almost feels like a gimmick that was born to fail, just the way they presented it. And according to the news reports, if those are to be believed, Emma did not perform well in the the practices or whatever, the walkthroughs and the whatever they were trying to do with the character. Apparently she wasn't performing well, and that ultimately led to them dropping the gimmick. Now, first of all, shouldn't you have made sure that she could play the character before you started doing all these vignettes and all those video packages hyping up the character's debut? To me, it feels like you kind of pulled the cart before the horse on that one. It's like, don't you think you should have made sure she could actually play the character before you actually hyped the character? I don't know. That just seems like a big mistake on my part. But, and this is not a knock on Emma at all. I think she's a talented performer. I think she can perform well if given the right role. This role is completely wrong for her. And I felt like that was an odd switch for her when it's like, oh, she's going to be like the supermodel, sexy, exudes sex appeal type of character, and I just felt like that's not Emma though. Whether she's heel or face, she's never been like a bombshell. And I'm not saying she's not attractive. She is. She's very attractive actually, but there's a personality and a presence that goes along to that type of character, like a Bond girl or something like that, or in wrestling, like the equivalent of that would be like a Sable, or more recently, I would say like probably someone like Lana or Maurice would have been a better fit for that type of gimmick than Emma. Like, Emma just doesn't really fit that gimmick. And again, she looks great in a bikini. I'm not saying that the looks aren't the problem. It's just personality and presentation. She just doesn't match that character that they were trying to create. And I know that Vince McMahon has a habit of like just being like, you're this now and you're that now, and just assuming that the wrestler should be able to carry whatever he gives them. But really, there should be like a level of being able to assess a talent and looking at what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, and giving them a gimmick and a presentation that can accentuate their strengths and hide the weaknesses. Undertaker is one of the greatest gimmicks of all time, maybe the greatest gimmick of all time, and it was born out of the fact that they were trying to highlight Mark Calloway's strengths and hide his weaknesses. And back in 1991, and 1990, I should say, what were his strengths? He was big, he was believably tough, and he was seemingly, he could be believably unbeatable. So they gave him a gimmick that would highlight that. And he's also pale white as fuck, so they gave him a gimmick that kind of fit that. It's like, oh, well, him being pale white actually helps because he's supposed to look like a zombie. But also, what were his weaknesses at the time? And, I know we all think of Undertaker as this great worker and who was like the best big man worker of all time when he could actually work and he wasn't fat. But, I hate to be a dick about that, but I'm sorry. That Royal Rumble performance was sad. But at the time, in 1990, Mark Calloway's weaknesses were he couldn't sell very well at all. Like, he was terrible at selling. And like I said, he was pale white. He kind of looked like a dead man walking. So they gave him a gimmick where he wouldn't have to sell. It's like, what? He's a zombie that rises from the dead. So selling doesn't have to be like a strong point of his skill set. Obviously, Undertaker learned how to sell as the years went on. He actually got pretty good at it. But in those early days, he couldn't sell worth shit. So they gave him a gimmick where he wouldn't have to sell. Ultimate Warrior could not work long matches. So they worked him in a way where have him work 30-second matches that are adrenaline rush, and he'll get over that way. You got to find ways, again, to show off the strengths, hide the weaknesses. And with a character like Emmalina, it's like they almost set up Emma to fail because, like I said, she's got a strong Australian accent, which, to be perfectly honest, the Australian accent, I'm not putting it down. I'm just saying it's like when I think sex appeal, I don't really think Australian. That's not an accent that's like instantly hot. I think like the Baroness from G.I. Joe, or I think like Alana, or like a Maurice, like French or Russian or something like that. I don't think Australian. So that's number one. Number two, she looks like, and again, she's very attractive, but she looks like she's built for athletics. Like, she looks like an athlete. So that should really be what they gear her towards, not being a sexy bombshell that's a femme fatale or whatever it is they were trying to set her up to be. That's just not fitting within her skill set and not something that she's probably capable of. And I could think of a ton of other examples, like Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is a character, or he's a talent that gave 110% to any character and gimmick they gave him. Like, whether it worked or it didn't, he gave an absolutely 110% to whatever shit they threw on his plate. Dashing Cody Rhodes was more in his wheelhouse because he's a good-looking guy, and he knows how to be cocky and arrogant. And he kind of naturally fits into that. So, really, dashing Cody Rhodes was actually more of a natural fit for him. Undashing Cody Rhodes, where he has to play like this broken psychopath, not really. Again, he tried to make it work, but it's like that's not really in his skill set. And I had a hard time believing that he was a psychopath and like this broken, tortured soul. It just didn't fit for me, and it didn't work for me. Now, Stardust, I honestly, in the early days, I thought he played it really well. He played it to the hilt. The problem there was the writing, and they didn't know what to do with it. That was the main problem with Stardust. But, yeah, it's basically my point is casting in pro wrestling is very, very important. I remember TNA, and I forget the guy's name. The guy that was the stalker to Christy Hemme, and he was kind of playing like a Patrick Bateman thing. I think that's a great gimmick for a wrestler. I think that's like, oh my god, that's like, there's so much potential there with this stalking, creepy psychopath character. But the guy playing it was so boring and dull that he just didn't like capture any. It just didn't work. And that's something that you want to like be careful of whenever you're creating a new gimmick or something. It really is all about finding the right guy to play the role. Kane is another great example. Glenn Jacobs, as we've seen from the fake Kane experiment, Glenn Jacobs is probably the only person that could have played Kane. And like I said, I could think of a ton of other examples, but there are a lot of times where I feel like in wrestling, they'll just come up with an idea for a gimmick, and it's probably a great idea, but they'll just throw somebody into the gimmick and just expect it to work because the idea for the gimmick is great without taking into account the wrestler's skill set and their natural attributes about whether or not the character will work. I mean, if you want somebody to be a male model, you wouldn't cast a sumo wrestler or somebody who weighs like 400 pounds. That wouldn't make any sense. You know, if you want him to be, I don't know, like a Jake the Snake Roberts type of guy, you wouldn't cast like a super handsome John Morrison type. You would cast someone like a Bray Wyatt. Something like that. Someone who looks like a little rougher around the edges, or like a Mick Foley type, or something like that. Mick Foley is a great example of like great casting in pro wrestling. Mick Foley would never be like a male model type. The closest he got was Dude Love, and that was more of a joke, making fun of the fact that he's really not the best looking guy. And Foley was able to take the attributes that he was given. Again, not the best looking guy. Kind of looks like a serial killer. And he can take a lot of bumps and work hardcore style real well. And he's a great promo, whatever he's trying to be, whether it's funny, psychotic, angry, whatever. And they used Foley's natural abilities to create the best characters and best gimmicks possible. And it typically worked for him. And, I mean, the recent Emmalina failure is just a highlight of what can happen when you don't cast well in pro wrestling. And my whole thing with that is that, again, why did you put her in the gimmick before figuring out if she could actually pull it off? And that's really, I mean, I kind of feel bad for Emma, actually, because that's probably going to reflect on her, that she couldn't play the gimmick that they gave her. But, it's really not her fault because she was just doing what she was told. And again, the idea for the character might be great. I don't know. But she was the wrong person to be playing that character, and that's something that you really need to be mindful of. And I don't know, I don't know what the tryout process is in pro wrestling. I'm sure it's not like a typical casting couch or anything like that. But if you have an idea for a gimmick, you should probably make sure that you have the perfect wrestler and perfect performer to fill the role. Actually, recently in NXT, I think Sanity, Eric Young, is perfect as the leader of Sanity because, again, he's kind of playing the character I think TNA was trying to turn him into but never quite got to that point. And, excuse me. And, but yeah, now in NXT, it's like, yeah, post-apocalyptic gang, and he's the voice piece for it, or the mouthpiece for it, and I think he's doing great. It's like, all right, terrific casting for a wrestling gimmick. Bray Wyatt could not have cast that character any better. I think he's doing fantastic in the role, or at least about as well as he can when the booking isn't fucking him over. But so casting in pro wrestling is very, very important. And next time, from now on, whenever you create, and this is not just WWE, but all wrestling promotions, if you have a great idea for a gimmick, make sure you can find the right person to play the role, because that will easily make or break whatever character it is you're trying to create. So, I just wanted to throw my 2 cents out there on the Emmalina situation and everything that went down with that. But, I actually have to go pick up my car now. It got towed over to the garage, like, right by my apartment building. So, that's good, but I still had to Uber home. Not good. That was gigantic pain in the ass. But anyway, future videos coming up, like I said, doing a DDP tribute. There'll be a review of Fastlane coming up sometime next week. And there was another video I was planning. I'm trying to remember what it was. Whatever. I'm sure it'll come to me when I have it written down somewhere. But for right now, this is all I have. So y'all enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hopefully you all enjoy Fastlane tonight. And I will see you all later.